We live in a world obsessed with connection, yet when some individuals are finally offered the love they've been looking for, they instantly push it away. To them, vulnerability feels like a trap. The only place they experience absolute, unfiltered safety is entirely alone. Rejecting affection is a highly calculated, deeply ingrained biological defense mechanism. This diagram illustrates how different brains process affection. On the left, a typical neural pathway routes a friendly gesture straight to a connection node. But for a child who grew up without emotional warmth, that exact same affection hits a physical barrier. The signal violently reroutes directly into the brain's threat response center. When a developing nervous system recognizes an environment lacks predictable care, it realizes it is entirely on its own. It begins constructing a rigid internal rule set to guarantee its survival. What looks like frustrating, self-sabotaging behavior to a partner is actually the brain executing a flawlessly practiced strategy. It keeps the environment predictable, and in nature, predictability equals life. The most exhausting of these strategies is hypervigilance. The brain learned early on that love is unstable, so it goes on permanent high alert. The nervous system becomes a tireless environmental scanner. It interrogates text messages, shifts in tone, and microexpressions, searching for the absolute earliest signal that a partner might withdraw their care. In this flowchart, an incoming compliment is cross-referenced against the brain's central database, a belief of inherent unworthiness. Contradicting the database causes a mismatch. The system flags the positive words as false data, routing them straight into a rejection and threat pathway. Pushing warmth away serves as a strict mathematical necessity to keep the brain's internal reality predictable and secure. When affection is withheld, the brain pivots to a second active defense, attempting to manufacture its own worth. If a child's love is tied strictly to high grades or perfect behavior, they learn a grim lesson. Their basic human existence carries no inherent value. In adulthood, this programming devolves into compulsive drives. You see it in the chronic overachiever or the relentless people pleaser who physically cannot say no. The brain treats achievement as a mechanical gear. Working harder turns the gear, attempting to fill an internal gauge of safety. But the transaction fails. The feeling of safety leaks out, resetting the entire mechanism and forcing the person back onto the treadmill. True emotional safety cannot be permanently purchased through performance. The individual is left running an exhausting race that has no finish line. Eventually, scanning for threats and grinding for approval exhausts the nervous system entirely. At this point, the brain deploys its passive defenses. Psychologists call this dissociation. It operates as the mind's ultimate emergency shutoff valve when the emotional environment becomes unbearable. The logic here is ruthless. By severing the connection to all emotions simultaneously, the brain completely removes the capacity to be hurt by them. This creates what we call the invisible self. A person will constantly apologize for taking up space, actively shrinking their physical and verbal presence in a room. They learn to aggressively hide their personal problems. Suppressing their own needs acts as a preemptive strike to ensure no one ever views them as a burden. Choosing to suffer in silence is the brain's calculated sacrifice. It trades all emotional connection in exchange for guaranteed protection against rejection. Recognizing these exhausting loops of hypervigilance, endless performance, and emotional shutdown in your own life can feel incredibly heavy. Possessing these traits is direct, biological evidence of a highly successful adaptation to emotional starvation. Your history is a triumph of survival. You navigated an environment that refused to give you the resources required to develop safely. Recognizing these responses as learned, outdated neurological codes is the first step to unlearning them. Once introduced to a stable, secure environment, those defensive structures can begin dropping their guard. By understanding the strict, mechanical logic behind these childhood defenses, you give your adult brain the necessary permission to finally power down its threat detection.